Hi, everyone. This is Jamie Crawford again from Internal Alignments Healing Arts. And we are still continuing on with our Spotlight series for the next weekish. And then we're taking a break for a while and we'll be back later on. But anyway, today we have a very interesting conversation around the concept of community with Joanna here. She's a pagan, a queer poet, a seer, and she's been professionally reading tarot since 2007. And she's also the leader of the Epic Oak Society poetry group on Facebook. So that's something you guys can tap into later on. So, Joanna, hello. Thank you for being here. And tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this interview series. Um, well, that's the classic interview question. I am an
Right.
introvert.
Uh-huh.
So talking about myself is not necessarily one of my strongest skill sets. Um, I, uh, since we're doing internal alignments, I can tell you a little bit about my astrological chart. I'm a Cancer sun. I have a Scorpio moon and a Libra ascendant.
Oh, wow.
And I don't study astrology to the extent of really being able to read other people's charts, but I do find it illuminating for my own personal work. Um, and yeah, I've been here living in Oregon for over 20 years. I'm originally from the East Coast, and I love it out here. Um, it's been interesting developing community in Oregon. It seems like it comes and goes in waves,
Uh-huh.
but it's really lovely to experience, the flexibility of having groups of people or specific people come in and out of your life.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is an interesting feeling because it all depends in my perspective from my experience. Finding communities has really been almost about timing for me. There's that divine timing
Mm.
aspect of when people are supposed to be in your life, and sometimes they leave because the purpose of that interaction is complete. Um,
Very true.
so yeah, without going down into a rabbit hole on that one, um, tell me about community for you. What like what does it mean? The community itself, and how have you found yourself moving through the various communities?
So I am far from an expert on community. I'm really a student,
Mhm.
and um, so what I have to say is really from my own experience and my own experience as at this point in my life of making efforts to create community that um, in ways that works within my own um, sense of self.
Mhm.
So, one of the most important things that I have learned about community that really it's just about showing up, and you don't have to be in a good mood necessarily. You don't have to be ready to have a party. You don't even have to be, like I said, I'm an introvert. So everybody is important to the community, not just the people that, are the movers and shakers or,
Right.
the extroverts that like to have a lot of social time in their
Mm.
lives. Um, it really takes all of us to create community. And the important thing is just showing up for the communities that you want to be a part of. Um, so for me, the communities that are important to me, the poetry community, of course. So
Uh-huh.
I started the Epic Oak Society as an open mic, and it was not super successful. It didn't really take off. I think there was something to do with the time of day and the place, maybe, that we were trying to host it. But it developed into this online community that I am really enjoying. And it's a way for me to share my work with other poets, as well as to encourage new poets to start and keep writing.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's important community to me. I also do go out to different open mics that have established in the Eugene area. Um, Although at this time of year, I tend to want to do the the hermiting, right? Or the
Yeah.
hibernating, right? So
Uh-huh.
going out and doing a lot of activities at night is not the easiest thing at this time of year. It's a lot easier when it's seasonally appropriate
Yeah.
for me. The other communities that I really find essential are circle work communities. So there's some really lovely groups that get together in person to do magical and spiritual work at the full moon and at other seasonal holidays.
Uh-huh.
Um, and also, my tarot circle, my practice circle is something that I started because I love to read tarot. And I think it's really important, again, to encourage new readers
Uh-huh.
to have a space to come and connect over reading the cards and learning about reading the cards. So I started that circle, and I have invite people over to my home, and we read about tarot, and it's been really amazing. There's probably at least 30, 25 or 30 people that have come, but each time it's only about 4 to 7 people. So it's a group that's really flexible and fluctuating.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's helpful. When you have those open communities and it doesn't feel so inclusive, where it's like only these people are allowed. I appreciate that you're like, I want anyone and everyone that is ready to even try using a new tool, and then sharing and teaching each other is so beautiful. So I did want to mention real quick with the poetry. I saw your post on internal alignments about the prompts for a poem. So I commented, I wrote a little poem. I'm not the best poem maker, but I got up in
Oh,
there and was like, you know what, I gotta try it out. So I did, and I hope that other people out there are gonna come across that post and use their mental poetry um, flex, I
thank
suppose.
you so much. That's so amazing. I
Yeah.
haven't seen your response yet, but I'm going to go and look for it.
Uh-huh.
It's so great that you tried something that you haven't necessarily done before. It's so good for the brain, right,
It
to try
is.
new things.
Uh-huh.
And um, for any of us, I mean, in so many different fields, writing is really important. Being able to put words together, to use words in a
Hmm.
creative way, and doing a little bit of poetry now and then, it will open your brain to all kinds of magic around using words and writing. So I'm really glad you branched out and you did that. Good job, Jamie.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely
You're
popped out of
part
my
of our
comfort.
poetry community
Yeah,
now.
right. I popped out of my comfort zone for that one. I mean, like
Mhm,
I have a book I'm writing and all that, but it's not the same as poetry. Poetry has more of a tapping into that creative sense
mhm,
for yourself, and then also trying to speak from the heart in its own way.
mhm,
So thank you for that
mhm,
post. And moving on into community, we talked a smidge about, the different types of communities. There's work communities, there's spiritual communities, there's um, friends, family communities, and then there's also those higher level communities that we're not quite, conscious of, or at least most of us, of those communities that are in the higher realms on the other side of the veil that are actually here every day to help us. So all that said, how do you feel that that spirit and those angels and higher realms um, help us in our sense of community?
That's a great point to bring up. And as an animist, I believe that spirit is in everything, and that we can create relationships with um, the the natural beings around us, with
Mhm.
plants, with animals, with stones, as well as with human-made objects too. I think that the more um, the more an item is cherished, um, the sorry, my computer just told me that it's running low on battery, so I'm going to give it some juice. There we
That's
go.
okay.
All better. um, the more that we invest an item and object with our attention,
Mhm.
or by honoring it, by ex by treating it as um, an essential tool, as something that we really cherish and love, the more spirit becomes invested in it. This is why, like, heirlooms have so much. You just feel them. Something that's been
Right.
handed down for generations and really cherished. You can really feel the spirit in that object or that item.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important when, in the mystical realms, for those of us that are tapping into, as you say, higher energies like angels and deities, to also recognize that the everyday objects, places, our homes have spirit in them too. And
Mhm.
to create relationship is a really powerful thing with those objects and items. Um, so when I want to say I'm constantly setting sacred space. And so it's not constantly, but on a very regular basis, oftentimes even daily, I am calling the four directions into my
Mhm.
space. And not just calling the four directions, but acknowledging that they're there already and welcoming them to join me in my day. And so when you're moving through sacred space in that way, it's really powerful, especially for those of us that live liminal lives, right? When you're
Right.
kind of on that edge, right, of the human reality, or the non-magical human reality, and the reality of being able to see through the veil, right?
Mhm.
So I find that creating community with the four directions, the elementals of the four directions, helps balance that sort of liminal living. And then, yeah, sometimes it's just, that I think that's a really important piece of community, is knowing that it's there. So knowing and believing and experiencing your angels and guides, or deities that you work with, as watching over you, as having a role in your life.
Right.
Um, and that's similar to, we can draw a parallel to the human community, which is just knowing that even when you're at home by yourself, the broader community is out there, right?
Yeah.
And available to connect with.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes, very much so. I have to agree there. It's like as a reader and being a very spiritual person, and I'm pretty much an introvert myself. So, doing a spotlight series like this is also stepping outside of my comfort zone. Um, but I understand what you mean, spirit, and then the spirit of objects and how they relate to our lives is there's a comfort in there.
Mhm,
There's a comfort that, okay, even though physically I may be alone, I'm still not alone. And that is such an important part of just being human in general is, we always need a connection. And if we don't have a physical connection in that moment, knowing and believing that we have a spirit team around us, and that's actually part of our community, is super, super important. And I hope that is pretty relatable to a lot of people out there, especially us that are introverts. It's a good reminder that we're not alone. Because that is almost like an epidemic in itself, a sense of
It
aloneness.
is. Yeah,
Yeah,
loneliness is really becoming it is becoming an epidemic, loneliness. So, um, yeah, and we can cultivate. I think when we think outside the box about cultivating community, it's really important. It's something that we have to actively do. Most of us
right.
have to actively, you know, be creative around manifesting the relationships that we want in our life. And when it comes to community, it's really about showing up. If this is a if
Absolutely.
there's a community that you want to be a part of, what it takes is showing up and joining in, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And people that aren't getting out of the house, at least now, with modern technology and the World Wide Web, there we do have access to communities. And you're right, it is all about showing up, but the only way to show up is takes those actionable steps. First, what interests you, what resonates
mhm,
with you, who do you want to interact with? How are you
mhm,
interacting with them? That all
mhm,
depends on the state of where you're at. Are you in a place where people debate a lot, or is it
mhm,
more a place of inspiration? And
mhm,
both of those are correct. It all
mhm,
depends on
mhm,
how and what you're interested in.
mhm,
So when it comes to, like, if we start coming into actual physical community, let's talk a little bit about the World Wide Web, the internet, Facebook, Instagram,
mhm.
you know, Blue Sky, X. I mean, the list goes on and on. Telegram. I'm like, people can jot down in the comments where they like to
Yeah.
be. So how do you feel about that? Becoming a part of a community online,
Mhm,
even though it's
mhm.
not in the physical. Do you find that people are fairly engaged? Or is it more about they're just kind of observing?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that people tend to, in my experience, there are some that are very engaged and some that are more of observers. So there's a wide spectrum, right? And
Right.
and in and I have found several very sweet communities within, for example, within Instagram. Um, there's some sweet communities centered around a variety of different content creators. In Facebook, what I find with Facebook is that um, the local events are really why I want to be on Facebook. And there are people that I have met through those events that have become, see them at events and then also online, which is very sweet. But
Yeah.
then your group, Internal Alignments, shows up, and I was like, what's this? I'm being invited to this very sweet community. And
Thank
I
you.
think that these are important for us because we have this fantastic tool, this technology, right? And
Hmm.
the internet, and we can make of it what we want it to be, right? So um, again, we have to show up and present the ideas or the 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 ways for others to engage with us.
Hmm.
Um, And so I think the value really comes when you find what speaks to your heart and what speaks to your soul, right? So poetry for me, the Witches of Eugene community, the um, on Instagram, the tarot reading community there, and I recently joined Substack. So there's another one. Um, but keeping that all in balance and really noticing, like, okay, am I doing something in this community that's nourishing me, or is it draining me, right?
Right.
Because
Uh-huh.
just the scrolling through endless reels of things that have nothing to do with your life and really become just advertising is not healthy.
No, it's not. And we have such short attention spans now because of social
Right?
media. So it's like, how do you put people on the hook? That's the technical
Mhm.
term, right?
Right.
Of getting them interested and wanting to engage more. And that's sometimes the hard part when you're first developing a group is like, how do I get engagement? How do I get people wanting to, truly interact in a community sense? Have you run into that in your when you're online groups to get people more interactive? And how do you
Mhm.
get them to be more interactive?
Mhm. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort
Mm,
on the group leader's part, right? To be commenting and encouraging people. I feel like thinking of ourselves um, as encouragers, as guides, right? And
uh-huh.
really believing that what we have to offer is is helpful, like having a really true, being very true, right? It's
Yeah.
not something that, like, I don't think you can do it because of some ulterior motive, right?
Right.
I think it needs to be really true that you believe that what you're offering to people is really helpful for them. And that's because that's the kind of person that I am. So, the poetry group, yeah, I would love to get a grant to write poetry, and I would love to be published and be paid for my publication. Like, those are personal goals of mine. And so the poetry group does serve those ends, but in the way that I'm constantly doing my practice. And
Right.
by encouraging other people to participate in poetry, it's like that next level, right? Like, you can do your work, but until you're teaching someone else, right, you haven't
Yeah.
really fully understood the depth of the work you're doing.
That's a really good point. We can learn all we want and practice all we want, but there's that it's like going up a level when you start teaching because then it's like I'm
Mhm,
learning because you're learning in a
mhm,
sense.
mhm,
And that is the same when we come back to community because then we're learning from each other. We have, the group facilitator like you do with your tarot groups
mhm,
and really start framing themes and things to be done within the group.
mhm,
So, there's that sense of relatability. And when we talk about relatability, that's really important for community, And so, um, is that something that you feel is why you've developed these groups because you want people to relate to each other, or you even relate to others?
Yeah, so these groups I've developed because these are my interests. These are what it's like what I love to do.
Uh-huh.
And I want to engage with other people in ways that really speaks to me, right? And I wasn't finding these groups that I mean, like in the Eugene community, I have been to many open mics and I have become part of several really fascinating communities of poets around those events,
Uh-huh.
and they've all fallen away. Like, people move on, businesses close. Like, there was a really lovely open mic community at Spectrum, the queer bar, and that ended up closing. And then new
Mhm.
things pop up in their place. I mean, nothing lasts forever, right?
Right.
um, but as long as I am providing space, either online space or in-person space, I know it's going to be there, right? Because
Right.
I've made a commitment to being there. Um, and for example, for the tarot study group, it's like I love reading tarot so much. Like, I do it professionally, so people pay me to read their cards. But at the same time, I want to be available for in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money, right?
Right.
So you can come to Tarot Study Group or Tarot Practice Circle. I renamed it to Practice Circle. You can come to Tarot Practice Circle for free. It's great if you can bring a gift in exchange, or $4, $4 or $5, if you can. Like, if you have
Right.
that capability financially in your life right now, it's great, but it's not required, because the community that I want to create, I want it to be available to all. And so, there's that level of giving a gift, because, and here we get into the level of, the community beyond the veil, or in the liminal
Mhm.
space, is I feel like when I give a gift to my community here now, by being available for Tarot Practice Circle, I am 100% sure that that's coming back around to me in this lifetime, that my guides and my angels are saying, okay, this gift exchange is happening. I believe in the gift exchange economy, and I know that it works magically, right? It's not
Yes.
something that we can really control.
Uh-huh.
Um, but within, like with the internal alignments group, it's like we become in alignment with the concept of giving a gift means a gift is coming to me. And so you have to pay into that gift economy in order to receive back from it.
Yes, that's a good point. Paying it forward,
Yes.
and that's just basically being part of like a kind human and embracing your own authenticity as
Yeah.
well. That is something that I notice more and more people are feeling more comfortable doing is, you know what? I can't have my mask on anymore. It's too
Mhm.
tiring. I'm just going to be myself and I hope you're cool with it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. That's what I hope to see society become is, more authentically yourself. So we can find those communities that we relate to or have similar mindsets and whatnot. So, with all that said, what, how would you give advice to people about joining a community?
Oh, what a good question. um, what advice would I give about joining a community? I would say try at least 3 times,
That's a
right?
good one. Yeah,
Right? Because the first time you go to an event or join an online group, right, you might have some social anxiety, right? You don't necessarily understand everything that's happening there. You're brand new, right? And
right,
we have to allow ourselves, give ourselves some leeway around being brand new. And when you go to a public space, a community space, either in person or online, you're learning. You're learning in public. And that can be
right,
scary, right? Because learning means you're going to make mistakes. And
right.
so give yourself, at least 3 significant interactions with that community. And from then, I think that after that third time, then you'll really be able to say, okay, can I analyze this? Was this a more, more on the positive side for me? Or was this not really a group that I feel in alignment with? And then people will be able to really tell. Um,
Yes.
So, like you said, approaching a new community with authenticity is essential, uh,
Hmm.
and that means, showing up however you might be, right?
Yeah.
And but then just continue if it's something that you love to do, if it's dancing, right? If you
Uh-huh.
love dancing, keep going back, right? Keep going
Right.
back. And I've actually joined several dance communities over the years, but um, it's something that I feel the need to do periodically. So I
Uh-huh.
feel like I can always go back. Like I feel like I could
Oh,
always go back to the swing dancing group, or I could always go back to the ecstatic dance group. But that's a community that for me is not something that I need to do every single week. It's more like a seasonal thing.
right. That makes
So
sense. That's a good point too, that, when you do feel comfortable in a community, you don't have to feel obligated to stay there forever. It's like most communities are pretty open-ended, and if you're not able to make a couple meetings and then you're like, oh, I got something else going on,
mhm.
and then you come back, when you come back to that community, it's not like people are going to judge you at all for
No.
being gone. It's more
Everybody's
like, oh my
human.
God, so good to
Yeah,
see you.
yeah.
And that's the beautiful part is there's a sense of, oh, I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know if I should even show up. They're going to judge me for not showing up,
Always
and
show up.
that's so not true.
Yeah, always show up. Yeah, if that's yeah. And I think that it's important if you take on an obligation or make a commitment to the community to provide something or, take on a role, then
Yeah,
that's really important to follow through with those commitments. But
absolutely.
if you're showing up as a participant, then yeah, we all a part of being an authentic human is accepting that we go through cycles, right? We're
Good
not
point.
we're not static.
Uh-huh.
So, the a community that you need to be a part of 1 year, maybe you don't need to be a part of for 4 years. But then, 5 years later, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go check it out again. And following our own inner cycles,
Uh-huh.
that's a really important piece too. It all
Yeah.
goes hand in hand.
It really does. And, if we circle it back to spirit and the other realms, sometimes I feel like they're literally maybe pushing me out of a community, saying, okay, either it's not the right time or you need to rest. You've been doing too
Yes.
much. It's
Oh,
time
yeah.
to rest. They like
Yeah.
literally will like push you down on the couch sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. And that's where if you're not in person at those times when you're resting, it's still important to engage, to show up. And that's when you can start tapping into online communities.
Mhm.
And I have a teacher, a beautiful, beautiful woman who reminds us that, what this is going on, and sometimes we don't feel well, or sometimes we're having a hard time getting somewhere or showing up. And she said that's just one of those personal barriers
Mhm.
that as humans we're constantly growing, right? There's that
Mhm.
set that theme of constantly growing. And when you hit a barrier like, oh, I don't feel good, I'm not going to show up today, those are the times you push through and show up
Mhm. Mhm.
because there's something important for you on the other side, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I feel that so deeply because it's important to show up in all of our phases, right? I mean, not
Right.
everybody that shows up to the community is going to, have had the best day ever or, be in a perfect mood. Like we all come with our own stuff and sharing that with the community in appropriate ways is important. So if you're not feeling super great, but you have a meeting, you have a group to attend or a class to attend, um, it's important to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be there and I'm going to do what I can do because
Right.
just being in the space is important. you know. Of
Mhm.
course, if you have something that might be contagious, stay home,
Right.
right?
That's
So
that is
don't go
on
somewhere if
its
you
own
have a
level,
fever
right?
or you're
Please,
coughing a lot. But
right.
that
Uh,
aside, like
yeah.
emotion, like feeling like, and that's the time when we really need our communities the most. Like if we're feeling really down or sad, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why you put in all the effort to show up when you were feeling good so that
Uh-huh.
you had a place to go when you're feeling sad too.
That is a phenomenal point. I constantly tell people when they're not feeling good or they're having some stuff going on, it's like just reach out. That's the first thing you do, just reach out. And you're right, the whole showing up is goes hand in hand with that. Um,
Mhm.
excuse me. I have animals scratching at the door, so I'm like
Oh.
trying not to get too distracted. I'm like, speaking of community, we have our
Right?
four-legged community.
Our four-legged friends. Yeah, our four-legged
Yes,
family members. Yeah.
that's so true. So true. So, how would you suggest people pick communities, like whether it's outside of the home or on social media?
I think that just finding, picking what you really love to do, what you want to be engaged in, having common interests with the other folks in that community. I think that's really the first thing. Um,
Mm,
and and it is, especially with online communities, I think it's a great idea just to observe
mm,
and for a little while before engaging to sort of get the feel the lay of the land, right?
yeah,
Um, I think that it's really important for all of us to do the work that illuminates what our path is, right?
right.
And we each have our own. We might have our own methodology for how we do that, but that's part of, I think, the purpose of being alive in these human bodies is to find out how to illuminate your path and to know where you want to go.
Mhm.
Um, or even if you don't know exactly what you want the outcome to be, to know what you want to experience along the way, right?
That's a very good point. And that's part of the whole showing up is, you don't have to interact if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable. The fact that you're energetically there on
Mhm.
some level, that's what's most important. Like on those days you're not feeling good, but you still show up. It's okay to sit in the back and be quiet. Or online, it's okay to just read through the stuff without interacting in any way. It's about the energy of
Mhm.
showing up. So those are really, really good points. Thank you. Um, so we're kind of close to the end of time here. Are there any other thoughts or advice you want to give around community to people out there, especially those that are still trying to, who consider finding their tribe?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it may not be about finding your tribe so much as about creating it.
Right,
Um, and know that if you are creating an online community, that there may be dozens of people that are seeing what you're creating that are not commenting or liking, but they're still there and they still appreciate it.
right,
Um, and so keep going, keep trying, keep um, putting in the effort because it's like with so many things in our lives, it's not necessarily about the final outcome, right? Our
right,
values our values guide us. They're not necessarily things that we're ever going to be able to achieve perfectly, but they guide our lives. So, with community, it's all about the doing. It's not so much about like that there's some magical ending where you have community. It's
right.
always going to be about the showing up. It's always going to be about creating the space.
Hmm.
And if you haven't found the space that you want to be a part of, maybe it's time for you to create the space that you want for others to join you.
That's that's beautiful. That's
Aw.
beautiful. It's so true. It's like uh, we have we live this life with our own personal experience. We really only have ourselves, and it's about our environment and people around us is how we grow. And
Mhm.
even if we don't start our own community, you can still show up to other communities and build a
Mhm.
tribe that way, that because you're
Oh, yeah.
making friends, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And friendship is something that you got to work on too. It's not just be like, "Oh, we're friends now," and then nothing. And I can't say I haven't done that either. It's like that's part of being an introvert, right? We're like, "I'm tired. I can't people today."
Right.
Right. Um, Well, Joanna, thank you so much for showing up today and having this conversation around how people can grow, you know.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for doing your part as well, providing us with, the poetry groups and in Eugene, the tarot reading groups, um, and just allowing yourself to unfold in that way is super beautiful. And thank
Thank
you.
you, Jamie. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you putting this series of interviews together. We have a community of all of us that have interviewed with you, which has been a really special experience. I really appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been such a blessing and fun, and it's just amazing to talk to people that you wouldn't normally talk to, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to all participants. Thank you to everyone who watches. And it doesn't matter if you comment, like, I don't care. It's more about just saying hi or, energetically saying hi and appreciating our community members. So thank you again. I'm just so full of gratitude today.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. So
Isn't
am I.
it?
Thank you. Yeah.
Good, good. All right, Joanna. How can people get a hold of you to become part of your communities?
You can find the poetry group on Facebook. It's Epic Oak Society.
Okay.
I have a website, Bright Heart Alchemy Guides, and you can find me there. And you can also find me on Facebook as Joanna Brooke. If you're interested in coming to the Tarot Practice Circle, feel free to send me a message and I'll tell you more about it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. I appreciate you very, very much. And
Thank you.
appreciate all the rest of you out there too. So have a wonderful day. And we're in the holiday season, so happy holidays. Bye, everyone.